Hello, and welcome to another fully live news episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody KIlian. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have my good friend and fellow hacker KIlian on, who is very small. KIlian, I'm sorry. Welcome back to the show. There we go.
Thank you.
It's good to have you on slightly early and the
Mhm.
actual time we're supposed to go live every week, I might add.
Hey, it's nice to be back on. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's like we're finally finding a good rhythm because for a few weeks we were traveling, going all different places. So now I think we're on track a little bit.
Oh, well, don't expect it to last because I know that tons of conferences are coming up. I'm starting to get emails inviting me to teams that are starting to plan for these conferences. It really isn't that long until all the stuff is going to kick off. I think it's like 6 weeks or so until things get really crazy for me anyway. So I have another conference coming up relatively soon. I think I told you about this one. And we've kind of had a tradition of like talking about like, oh, if you're going to this conference for the first time, like here's some tips. This time, I want to put it out to the audience. Yes, James, I know we're early. This is actually if I was on top of things when we would start. I've just been starting at 2 p.m. no matter what time zone I'm in. And as you can tell, I've been in a lot of random time zones. But yeah, so I actually wanted to ask the audience this time. If anybody has been to Tour Camp, TOOR, it's basically, like root backwards, like the default login for Kali used to be. If you've been to Tour Camp, what would you recommend and what would you kind of tell me as a first time goer? Because I'm learning new things about this camp every day. So it's supposed to be an outdoor hacker camp, and there's several of these in Europe, and I just missed one called EMF Camp that I was really wishing I could go to this year. It just wasn't the year this year. I've got too many other things going on right now, but a lot of my friends are there, and man, I really wish that I'd been able to go. So this is the American version of that, apparently. And I'm very much looking forward to finding out what it's like to do hacker stuff while camping in kind of a free form environment. Right. So the lack of structure is kind of the nice thing here, where you make your own camp, you kind of get people to come and join you in that camp. You create ways for people to interact with you. They run like phone lines out to the various camps. So you can like call different camps, which is all really cool. So I'm really looking forward to going, but I wasn't aware that I couldn't just like drive up to the campsite. It's like, there's so little space that there's actually a shuttle that kind of drives you out and then you find a spot, and that kind of seems to be how it operates. So if you've ever been to Tour Camp, please, even if you're watching this from repeat, drop a comment and let us know what is different about this camp. What is fun about it. I know several of the people that I've talked to who worked at Layer 1 also worked at Tour Camp as staff, and I'm going to be running a bunch of workshops, so that doesn't exactly make me staff, but I am going to be like doing things there. So I want to learn more about it. And of course, I'm going to jump in on the Discord server. But if anybody in our audience has been there, I'm certainly going to have a lot to report back about it after it happens at the end of this month. So it's going to be from Wednesday till Sunday, I believe, the last week of this month. So yeah, it's really coming up soon. So if you're going to be going, then I guess I'll see you there. But if you've been before, please let me know. Like, what should I know about going to this conference for the first time? But it's basically universally good feedback is what I've heard from people who have been to this experience. So KIlian, hopefully I can bring you there next year if I make it back alive.
Right. I was literally sitting here as you explained it. I was looking it up on my phone because I got to see what this looks like, and it looks awesome. So yeah, I'm curious to hear what your experience will be on this, because it sounds, I don't know, I'm not much of a camping person, but like I could see this being fun. Like, yeah, if I get a bunk, I'm okay.
Sleep. Yeah, I get terrible sleep when I camp most of the time. So we'll see whether or not I actually am having fun by day 3. I'm very much like, I enjoy having a very like solid plan for how I'm going to sleep, so that I know that the next day I can handle anything, because frequently I plan for way too much, and then I have to like use all of my reserves to deal with the chaos. So we'll see if camping outside is conducive to that style. So
I think James is right. They shuttle you out to the middle of nowhere. Yeah, is this at Camp Crystal Lake or where's this at?
Well, it is going to be on the San Juan Island. So yeah, if this was a horror movie scenario, then you would be isolated on an island where it would be like kind of difficult to get off. So maybe bring a boat, just bring a kayak in your car, so you could just leave.
There you go.
Like, and go to a different island. There are ferries that run, and I actually when I was, I think, like 17, 16, met someone on AOL Instant Messenger that lived on that in the San Juan Island. So I've actually been up there many times because I made a friend there and I got to experience it as a kid. It's absolutely gorgeous. So it's like right on the border of Canada. So yeah, it's one of the most beautiful settings, I think, to have a hacker camp. And right now is a gorgeous time to be out there. So the bugs are going to be crazy, but you know, it is what it is. It really is hard to get away from that now. Okay, so I've got some things I want to show off before we get started on the news. One of them, I was just waiting for this to happen. First of all, it's a great joke, so I really appreciate the name Total Recall. But we were talking about the Windows like recall feature that basically screenshots your computer and allows you to go back and like kind of analyze the behavior. Well, now there's a tool to abuse that called Total Recall. It really did not take long. And of course, that dumps key presses, text, and screenshots as JPEGs made in the last few months using Microsoft Recall. So from now on, I believe this is going to be a cat and mouse game of people abusing this feature that everybody agrees is easy to abuse. But now that it's been demonstrated, you might want to check it out if you're curious as to how the Windows Recall rollout is going. I also, oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, it was funny that we talked about this just last week. I was at the Gartner conference in DC for the first half of this week, and it came up all the time. I mean, AI in general, but this particular recall feature built into the Copilot PC or whatever they're calling it nowadays came up so often. And universally, people are like, this is not going to end well. I mean, yeah, I'm worried.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely could be. I realized it was sharing. My screen share was like showing the complete wrong article, but you know, there you go. So yeah, if you want to check this out, Wired has a good piece on Total Recall. We have a lot of other news to go over, but if you're looking for tools of the week, then this is one of my picks. My second pick for tool of the week is going to be this shade map. So often when you're trying to identify something or even like a particular time when something might have been taken, and maybe you already know the location, then this is a map that includes all the trees, all the bushes, all houses, all buildings, and allows you to adjust the time of day for a particular location and see exactly what the shade pattern would look like. So if you want to identify the time of day in a particular video and you want to basically see you know, what a shadow should look like in the background from a mountain or a building or something like that, this is a tool that allows you to do geo investigations and incorporate information like shade placement into your investigation, which to me is pretty crazy. So like I don't know, I've never seen something like this before, but frequently a shadow will be a critical clue that gives you context of maybe like what time of day this must have been. So being able to at least establish that on a particular day would certainly be useful to a lot of people's investigations. And I think that this tool not only allows you to place a particular spot based on shade, but it also allows you to potentially lock a particular time that an event happened.
Yeah.
Super, super cool tool.
It's funny. One more sidetrack about the recall thing. James says opening a private window doesn't mean much anymore. All it makes me think about with that comment and the recall is I think there's a really old XKCD comic that was like somebody like looking at something inappropriate in like an in-private browser, and then like the next panel it zooms out and he's in like a library or something with people around.
Yeah,
that's just the way it feels.
Right. Yeah, and that's why we were talking about some of the client-side scanning that was being kind of like potentially normalized and integrated into people's phones, where it basically like nannies anything that comes into your phone, and even if it comes in encrypted, it gets automatically scanned and you get reported if it gets identified by certain groups that are, in that case, not actually official government groups, just kind of like agencies. So it raised a lot of alarms that maybe we're having too many people look behind the lens here, and that's kind of now happening to laptops only and computers only. The problem is it's not necessarily for, you know, rescuing children in this case. It is just for convenience, and that makes the argument all the more difficult in my opinion. So yeah, it seems like this may now be opt-in, but the same kind of argument that people were saying against that kind of scanning kind of applies here, where yeah, if you expect to be using a computer in a private way and you have a tool that's collecting all this data that can easily be exfiltrated, that's obviously something that hackers are going to love to abuse. All right, so we have the Geo OSINT tool, and then I wanted to talk about 1Password for journalism. So I have done a lot of training, and I actually keep in touch with a lot of the journalists that I have trained. A lot of them are affiliated with the Norwegian Institute of Journalism. So if you are someone that I've done training with, or if you went to Defcon with me a couple years ago, then hi, it's nice to still be connected. So you might have noticed that your 1Password account was recently frozen. If you're a journalist that trained with me, or if you're somebody who applied to the 1Password for Journalism program, then right around the RSAC conference, your account was automatically frozen. And that meant a couple of key things. One, you can no longer add credentials to your vault. Two, you can no longer autofill. And this is a best practice thing where years ago, I covered a tool that steals clipboard passwords and basically assumes that people are going to be using password managers by copying and pasting. And 1Password responded and said, well, this is not best practices. You should be autofilling. You should never be copying and pasting. So it basically took this group of people that they said, like, hey, we really value you. We think that your security is really important. Gave them a free account for several years. And then, like, very abruptly, downgraded it so that they can no longer functionally use that. So a lot of the journalists that I trained before reached out and asked me like what was going on. And they were basically put in a position where they're now forced to pay for this subscription if they want to have a number of features that they were using, like the ability to share credentials between colleagues. So I reached out to 1Password around the time of the RSAC, and and they responded that they were upgrading this program and they can get a 2-year free discount on 1Password individual, which has a bunch of differences, one of which is you can't share credentials. So if you're a team of journalists or if you're working on a team, it makes it a lot harder to work together on just about anything. So I asked whether or not this was there was abuse of this policy, or if like somebody was abusing it. So maybe there were too many free accounts being made, or like entire businesses were running off of it, and maybe that wasn't fair. And I also asked how people could basically proceed if they didn't want to pay for this, like if they could switch to another provider, and they just did not answer me on that. So I have to credit them. They did give me a response, but it kind of like evaded 2 of my questions about like how you can move on. So I asked people on my Twitter, and it's just like, hey, what is your favorite password manager that's open source? Because the solution here is like, if you can use an open source tool, then nobody can yank away the ability to securely use your password manager or add new secure passwords. And to me, like, this felt kind of not so good. So in the future, when I'm doing journalist trainings, I'm going to be using a vendor neutral approach, or at the least I'm going to be using an example that's open source, so that it is maybe a little bit more confusing on setup and maybe not as feature rich, but still gives a consistent set of features that doesn't change over time. So that was really embarrassing to have to go back to a lot of the people that I trained and explain why their accounts were locked, because they thought that like they'd done something wrong or they were under attack. So little bit of a surprise from that. But anyway, there are options for people who are interested. I will say that Bitwarden was the #1 responder, and also Bitwarden itself responded to the look, Bitwarden itself responded to the thread. So I'm not one to endorse, but I will say for responsiveness, like someone tagged them and they just showed up. So I'm gonna follow them. Again, not an endorsement, but I have recently ended my friendship with 1Password, and I am now interested in a new friendship with Bitwarden, especially if it's something that is open source and journalists will have continued access to. So anyway, a little bit of a development on password managers, because I do recommend them for everyone, but previously, like I'd been recommending at least one for journalists. So anyway, we also have some news about Defcon. So my team is going to be working with IoT Village, and we are going to be creating Defcon badges that are LoRa badges. So you can see in this little screenshot, we all got together for the Layer 1 conference, and our friend Zach is the one who's going to be helping us out with making these badges. We're really excited because we've already got some fun prototypes. And we already have 1 out of the 3 sponsors we need to finish this project. The proceeds are going to help benefit IoT Village, which is an awesome space for learning hacking at Defcon, and it's been around for a good long time. So if you want to check them out, you can see their tweet here. They have a contact if you want to reach out to them and sponsor. That means that we get to do some fun stuff involving Meshtastic. So I've been doing some cool experiments. We talked about that on previous streams. And I, while flying around now, have been able to receive messages from like 200 kilometers away. I was flying over Fresno and I was getting messages from someone in Gilroy over by the coast. So the potential of this kind of stuff is super cool. And we're going to be making some fun badges. So check out IoT Village. They're going to be a lot of fun for Defcon. And hopefully we'll be there doing a lot of cool stuff. All right, let's jump into the news. We've got a ton of stuff to cover. Do you want to go through the wildest stuff first?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, so recently we were talking about how Android devices have switched on the ability to discover air tags that are tracking you. And previously, Android users were just not aware of this. I've had 3 air tags in my luggage for a super long time, and I, forgot about them until very recently when I started getting relentless amounts of notifications that they were, in the car with me. So this is a case where somebody who was a human smuggler or a suspected human smuggler was using an absolute ton of air tags to monitor someone he brought into the United States. So this was an investigation that showed the full potential of how this technology can be used to stalk people and to be incredibly invasive, especially in domestic situations where someone feels like they don't have anywhere to go. So the FBI got involved in the situation, and they did things like they disabled the air tags and saw how this person reacted in order to definitively prove that they were the one who was placing them. So, for example, they disconnected an air tag in a specific spot and then observed him show up and start looking around, trying to figure out where it had gone. So really, really important to note how this technology, while convenient, can also be used in all sorts of unfortunate ways. This was one of the craziest stories of the week, just because of how many air tags were used and all the different places they were placed. Now, because of some of the updates to Android, it's possible for someone to detect this sort of tracking a lot more easily. But it's just shocking to me that air tags came out how many years ago, Kilian?
Oh boy, it's been pre-pandemic, I think, wasn't it? I mean, I'm trying to remember back. So that's quite a while, at least 5-6 years, maybe more.
Yeah, it was really something that shocked me that up until a couple of months ago, it was not possible for like an Android user to be able to detect like this level of intrusiveness when someone was abusing the technology to follow you. So crazy story about how people have been abusing air tags, definitely worth checking out, but hopefully a little bit less viable now that all major devices are detecting these trackers and should warn the user a little faster.
I was wrong. 2021. I thought AirTags were out for much longer. I mean, still a few years, but wow.
Yeah, I mean, in those couple years, I think a lot of people have found like AirTags in all sorts of like unfortunate and strange places. So I'm jumping to the middle of the article in this one because the header is quite graphic. But this is a story that we were talking about some of these anonymous and encrypted messengers that are often embedded into phones that are sold to criminals or people who, very much value their privacy for reasons. And this was a story by 404 Media talking about how someone was basically rescued by the fact that the encrypted phones they were using had been backdoored by the FBI from the start. So this story is incredible. Basically, what happened here was someone was kidnapped and they had this encrypted phone that they had, not recently been using for crime. It was a new phone that they had just set up. The FBI was basically monitoring it. So from the second he opened it up and he was messaging people on it, the FBI was live monitoring the events of the phone. He got kidnapped and the kidnapper sent a photo of him beaten up to his friends and family via this app and started demanding money. And the FBI, because they had backdoored this phone from the start, was not only able to intercept these in real time, but also get his GPS coordinates and send a tactical unit to basically rescue this guy, which incredibly, incredibly crazy that the only reason he was able to get help was because he was like possessing a phone that was completely backdoored from the very beginning. Never heard of anything like that. But we talked about how a lot of these drug marketplaces and also how some of these encrypted phones have become increased targets for law enforcement because they attract so many people that are looking for these sorts of services. And there's kind of this like legend that these things exist out there and that can facilitate all these kind of unfounded claims that people jump on and start doing illegal stuff, which apparently gets live streamed to a police center like somewhere in Texas. So this to me was probably one of the craziest things. I think this was also covered on like Darknet Diaries recently. Like a friend reached out to me and was like
Mhm.
talking about this. So if you're looking for a wild story about the cat and mouse game between encrypted communications and like police agencies, like check this one out by 404 Media. It's probably my favorite read this week. All right, on to less all relatively unfortunate things. We have a AI data breach. So this is from Hugging Face, and this is a platform where people are able to distribute AI models and share AI training data. There's a lot of things that are stored here, and a lot of companies use this to enable AI models to be embedded in their products or to be used live. This is something that a lot of researchers use. And when I was messing around with AI tools, because I had a laptop capable of doing it, I did use a lot of things from Hugging Face to store model weights or like other like trained models so that I didn't have to do the training all over again. So it seems like their Spaces platform was breached. And it looks like secrets may have been exfiltrated. So they were recommending that users refresh their tokens and switch to something called finely grained access tokens. KIlian, do you have any experience with these? Because I had not heard of them before.
No, this isn't. This is a new one for me. I mean, we talk a lot about how like the API keys and access tokens are often overlooked in corporate security. Developers and things will leave them around and often lead to smart attackers finding them and leverage them to connect to other systems and even more juicy treasure troves. But this particular one, I'm not familiar with. I haven't that experience. Yeah.
So it seems, and I'm just like kind of spitballing, it seems kind of self-documenting that it has like specific permissions or like it's very, very limited in what it's able to do rather than giving like kind of total access. They seem to explain it here, but this article made my eyes cross, so I stopped reading about halfway through. I had other things to do. So that's the recommendation basically, is that like you shouldn't have like such like open tokens, and instead you should use these new fine-grained tokens, and that's going to give them tighter control over who has access to the AI models. But AI models are like, you know, hot. Like if you have a novel AI model, or if someone wants to steal it for espionage purposes, or to avoid having to rent out a very expensive cluster of computers to like do all the computation, then like these weights and these models seem like something that's absolutely worth stealing. So it also could be used to pivot into other organizations' environments. So if you've got authentication tokens, if you've got API keys that are being exchanged with an AI to allow it access to your data, then potentially this attack could also reflect back on people who have these integrations and have given the integrations access to sensitive information potentially to like, you know, allow the AI model to perform a specific function. So, you know, think like a chatbot that has access to a bunch of service documents, some of which might not maybe should be external. Theoretically, somebody might be able to abuse those secrets to then exfiltrate the data that you're using to power the AI's like interaction with customers or something like that. So kind of a complex breach to understand in terms of like what could happen from this. But that was kind of my take on what the implications were here for why this is kind of a significant breach. All right, next up, we have Cox, which is one of, I think it is the largest private broadband like telecommunications company. So they have a bunch of supplied modems, and this is something where I always just immediately switch mine to something that the vendor didn't supply, because so frequently the settings that they use are either not updated very frequently or optimized towards just getting people to not complain and not necessarily security. So if everything is kind of like slated towards convenience and these things all have the same configuration, then frequently they are susceptible to all being hit at the same time. And we just talked about in the last stream how a mystery attacker disabled a whole bunch of routers by hitting them all at the same time. And guess what? They were all from the same telecommunications company, and it caused a widespread outage in the Midwest area. So I don't know if it was this one. I can't guess. But, you know, it does certainly imply that the problem of a telecommunications company giving out routers that all have a vulnerable configuration and then potentially having an attack that allows somebody to just disable internet in a large area, that could have very real implications for you know, overall the overall area's ability to do business, and being able to ransomware like a whole geographic area by disabling like a whole region's internet. It's hard to calculate the economic damage that would cause, but it certainly seems like at a certain point a pretty straightforward calculation. if threat actors are looking for new ways to attack. So anytime I see like widespread attacks or test attacks, I always start to think about how could they monetize that. And it's a little scary to see widespread ability to just disable internet in a geographic area. That, you know, can't be good.
That's the thing that I don't think a lot of people maybe are familiar with too, is like all of these devices do have management interfaces. Going back way long time ago in my career, I used to work and do support for cable modems and things like that. So that's something that I don't think people realize. You can do all sorts of stuff. It's mostly for user diagnostics, but like there's config stuff and all sorts of other things back there. So it's just interesting now at this point in my career to see like it's still coming up.
Yeah. And I love routers as attack surfaces because it's like a, you know, it's like a game where if you win, you get free internet and you can use that internet for whatever you want. It's utility, you know, it's like, it's almost like you're stealing like power, gas, or anything else, where we see cyber criminals renting them out to basically like route traffic or do all sorts of like, you know, things that they can sell, like an anonymous proxy network that just rotates through commercial IP addresses that haven't been flagged. So these are juicy targets, and it's no surprise to me that these sorts of attacks are kind of accelerating and getting more sophisticated. All right, so we have some data executive firms convicted for helping fraudsters target the elderly. And this is something that I don't see very often, but Epsilon Data Management was apparently involved in not only collecting, enriching, and then selling this data to nefarious parties. They were apparently also aware that these parties were using it to push fraudulent scams on the elderly. So this was a scam that primarily targeted elderly people with worthless or junk opportunities that cost a lot of money and delivered pretty much nothing. As a result, they needed like highly specialized data to make them seem more reputable. And this company, Epsilon, happily supplied the scammers with all the personal information that they needed to conduct these scams, and apparently received some sort of kickback for it. So the scheme lasted for 10 years, resulting in hundreds of thousands of Americans losing large sums of money to fraudsters in what was essentially a targeted data-driven scam. So this information that has been scooped up by people from Facebook, all these other sources, and then been collected by these advertising firms or these data collection firms is now kind of out there for rent. And if people are willing to be unscrupulous about it, or if they've been offered a good enough deal, this data is definitely coming back to haunt people in the form of highly personalized, highly specialized scams that have a lot of information about you.
So I guess my takeaway from this is, one, if you're in the United States, make sure you voice your support for a comprehensive data privacy bill, whatever it happens to be, so we can get rid of these type of mass data brokers. I mean, this is criminal on top of that, but the mass collection of data like this is it's enriching somebody, but it's not doing anything for the general population. It's only
we're not even done talking about the customers who have been you know, screwed over by this type of data breach, because we have a lot of people who are getting free credit monitoring, actually millions of Americans who qualify for free credit monitoring this week. So it's kind of like, I feel like at a certain point, I'm like super Oprah, where I'm like giving away, or at least notifying people that they've got free credit monitoring. But everyone in our stream this point has probably gotten free credit monitoring like 5 or 6 times by the amount of data breaches that we've talked about and how many millions of Americans are included in it. So if you're not, if you don't have free credit monitoring already, you're probably going to get free credit monitoring by the time we're done with this segment. So let's move on. All right. So the collection agency FBCS ups its data breach tally to 3.2 million people. And guess what? That includes their full name, social security number, date of birth, account information, and driver's license number or ID card. So if you're already paranoid, now you're not going to know if someone who's calling you is a scammer or someone who just happened to buy this data breach that includes detailed information about legitimate debts that you owe. Wow. Thanks. So data breach notifications have been sent out to these people directly. So expect a ton of paper to be wasted on this as well. And they are now at elevated risk of fraud and social engineering attacks, as somebody could simply pass this information through like ChatGPT and get customized campaigns based on all the information that they've stolen. And again, this is valid debt. So you're going to get people coming out of the woodwork claiming potentially to be a collection agency who then have every piece of information that collection agency legitimately has. So that's great. And guess what? You all now qualify for free credit monitoring. How great. All right, so we got 2 of these, and we're seeing them more and more, and I'm starting to think it's a trend. So major London hospitals have been disrupted by a ransomware attack, and this is including like pathology stuff, all the different like urgent blood results that you would need for like a poisoning or somebody having some sort of like complication that involves needing to analyze their blood quickly are not being able to be done because of this IT outage. So it seems like it's like this was the flash that they sent to customers, and it reads like a wartime telegraph message. Like it is tense to say the least. So integration, data innovations, DI inaccessible, therefore cannot send, receive analyzer info from any site. CITM inaccessible, therefore cannot receive analyzer info from inaccessible. Like it's repetitive and seems like almost like an emergency broadcast system, but that's essentially what is happening. These hospitals are obviously emergency centers, and being able to access data or get diagnostics quickly is part of their core function. So these are major hospitals that are involved now in this ransomware attack. And because it's like a tech company that seems to be supplying like services to these hospitals, it makes it complicated because threat actors will maybe not go after a hospital directly, but instead go after a company that has lots of data and potentially has hospitals as either their exclusive or maybe just one of their customers. This is the kind of incident that draws transnational like coalitions of police to go after like specific ransomware groups. So I hope it was worth it, because this is not a quiet attack. This is how you achieve like maximum stars on the ransomware gang scene. So if you like what would be goofy here is if like a low level ransomware affiliate just like signed up for their first campaign and pressed go, and the thing automatically just attacked like the largest like human cost target it possibly could, and just saddled them with like an incredible police response. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, this is one of the most unfortunate things that can happen, because once medical data is encrypted, or if diagnostic services are down, it certainly makes it very difficult for them to provide the services that are critically needed. And there's only so much capacity when multiple hospitals are affected by the same ransomware attack. All right, next up, speaking of unfortunate ransomware affiliates buying things that they barely understand, the V3B phishing kit is out and being promoted on Telegram channels. And this is something researchers are keeping an eye on because it lowers the bar for who can get involved in these relatively sophisticated scams. These are major financial institutions in Ireland, the Netherlands, Finland, Austria, Germany, France, Belgium, Greece, Luxembourg, and Italy being targeted. And even advanced two-factor authentication bypass is supported in some of these kits. People are paying between 130 and 450. I'm sure that's converted from euros, depending on what's purchased. And it features advanced obfuscation localization options, meaning it can pop out of like localized VPN tunnels. So frequently this will be something that's paired with like a VPN service or a proxy service that makes it look like I said, like maybe you're coming out of a vulnerable internet service provider's like customer's router that somebody hacked into and set this up. So it makes it very difficult for somebody to be able to tell that you're not incredibly close to where you're supposed to be. And typically these geo-fenced warnings will tell you, okay, this person's in Australia, you live in Germany, maybe they shouldn't be logging into your bank account if you just logged in yesterday. But if you're popping up in a nearby village, it's much harder to identify that is a threat, instead of, maybe somebody just traveling a couple of miles. So this is a highly sophisticated tool that's being sold for a very low cost. And it means that people can go after one of the most valuable assets that most people have on hand, their banking credentials, to just drain their account. So be on the lookout for these sorts of things. It's apparently built on highly obfuscated JavaScript on top of custom CMS to evade detection by anti-phishing and search engine bots. So it really does seem like something that, at least on the phishing scale, people are going to need to watch out for. And this applies to organizations as well, because certainly putting your business's banking information into one of these would allow for a lot more than one individual's bank account. All right, so the FBI is warning of fake remote work ads. And this is basically the same like pig butchering scene we've seen over and over, recycled into a new format. So what is the grossly named pig butchering? Well, it is typically a scam where people are told that they are making earnings, and they're seeing this fake number go up and up and up. But then when they try to cash out, it continues to charge them fines and fees, waiting periods, and eventually they realize that they're never going to get that money. And the entire point is all those fees, all those fines, all the money they pay to unlock things or invest is actually going directly to the attacker. So this version of that scheme will offer you an easy job where you're like optimizing a website, or you're just clicking around in your underwear, like doing basically almost nothing, and purports to pay you like a huge amount of money. So in order to unlock these jobs, and they're very competitive, so you have to pay to unlock them, you have to put real money in. So maybe assume it's like $25 per job, and it gives you $100, and you're like, wow, you can unlock another one. That was so easy. And then you spend another 25 and another 25. And pretty soon you've spent $400 on unlocking these jobs. And now you have like $7,000 worth of work dollars that you've accrued, and you're ready to cash out. So it charges you maybe a fraction of that. And then it says that your bank is charging a fee, and you have to wire this last amount. And at that point it's like denied. And then your account just gets deleted. That's it. That's the whole thing. You just spent like, $500-$600 on a scam, worked, admittedly doing a nonsense task, and then there's no paycheck for you. And they can also say that you're going to get paid in like 30, 60, or 90 days and continue to scam that person, all the while just taking their money. So be on the lookout for these scams. The FBI is warning about it. And again, same scam, just recycled, and something that has been a popular scheme for a long time. All right. This is a pretty short one. TikTok fixed a 0-day bug that basically allowed someone to take over a high-profile account by simply opening a DM. So you didn't need to click on anything. Just opening that DM was enough to give that person control over your account. They fixed it relatively quickly, but this was a pretty shocking one. And anything that is high visibility like this and allows someone to take over an account with lots and lots of views allows them to push scams and schemes, and that's typically what it's used for. But obviously that's sort of like 0 day is pretty rare. So seeing one at TikTok, we don't see that every day, but they fixed it relatively quickly. So I have to say, like at least in this scope, it doesn't seem like it was as bad as some of the major Twitter breaches that I remember, where like really high profile accounts were hijacked and used to push like cryptocurrency scams.
Right.
All right, so Kali Linux 2024.2 was released. It's got 18 new tools, and let's go through a couple of them. So we've got Auto Recon, which I'm excited about. It's a multi-threaded network reconnaissance tool. I bet it sounds loud as hell. Like I bet that you get noticed immediately. So if you fire this one off at work, expect to have a conversation with IT. Coercer, automatically coerce a Windows server to authenticate on an arbitrary machine. That sounds fun.
That's interesting,
Right? We have a Python rewrite of sharp, whatever this is. Command line utility for searching and downloading exploits, get exploit. Oh yeah, I like that. Go Witness, which is a web screenshot utility using Chrome headless. Horst, highly optimized radio scanning tool. This is another one that I'm really interested in.
I was gonna say, I saw that in the list, and I'm like, Kody's gonna be pumped for this one.
Oh yeah. So this is a advanced yet simple tunneling / pivoting tool. I don't do a lot of red teaming, so this doesn't particularly interest me at the moment, but I can see like utilities where I'll just like use what is an attack tool to just do like a mundane like networking task because it's convenient, using a gun to turn off the TV, as it were. And then let's see, man in the middle 6, pwning IPv4 via IPv6. That's mysterious. That intrigues me. NetExec, network service exploitation tool that helps automate assessing the security of large networks. This was the other like networking tool that I'm really excited to try out. This one sounds potentially maybe less loud because if you're auditing a large network, presumably it's like a corporate or some other network, and maybe it's supposed to be quiet, or maybe this is just like a networking tool. I'm excited to find out. We have pspy, which can monitor Linux processes without root permissions. That sounds useful for a number of things. And we've also got payload development tools, Snort, which is something I've heard of before and I've seen, and I think I actually covered this on Nullbyte way back when. And this is a flexible network intrusion detection system. So I talk a lot about like how to defend against attacks as well, and Snort is something that's come up before. So being able to detect network intrusions through like sniffing or snorting, as it were, for suspicious traffic is often something like, oh yeah, maybe use like Wireshark, or maybe use like Kismet. And while those are good, they're not specifically dedicated to doing that, whereas Snort actually is. So yeah, excited to see that there. And there's also an API to access the Wayback Machine. Lots of cool stuff. I think people will also get some use out of running applications via VPN tunnels with temporary network namespaces for stitching things together or servers together. That seems pretty cool. So yeah, lots of cool updates. So if you're looking for some fun stuff to do, try updating Kali and trying some of these new tools. All right, next up, So this is the KIlian ransomware gang being linked to the attack on the London hospitals. So this is a group of Russian cyber criminals. Yes, we can see the same frantic alert. And this attack obviously is something, like I said, will probably provoke a pretty large international response. However, if these cyber criminals are in Russia, it's super unlikely that anything is going to happen to them, which may be the reason why they've been emboldened enough to go after something that would be considered critical infrastructure. And yeah, so definitely expect attacks against this criminal group's infrastructure now that they have exposed themselves. And this is also a group that used to go under the name Agenda, but looks like they have been rebranded about a month later. So still more details coming out on this, but there's a lot of focus on VMware ESXi virtual machines. And I've only been aware of these since the big Las Vegas casino hacks, because they came out that those were what was targeted. But apparently these are an incredibly important piece of a lot of businesses' structure, and targeting them is increasingly popular. So we'll go also through some tools in a minute that are kind of targeting that, and that kind of explains why. All right, so this is a ridiculous story. KIlian, what are your thoughts on
this? This was funny. I think this wins the award for the most. How do I want to put it? I'm not gonna say wholesome attack or breach, but because the whole crux of it is Disney shut down the Club Penguin, which I'm too old for that, but I've heard about it. And so somebody stole the source code more or less and have been running their own rogue Club Penguin servers and then released a trove of information around it. It's a little bit wholesome. It's at least not actively malicious, but not much to it.
Can I just say that Bleeping Computer's coverage has gotten so much better since they started using Midjourney instead of the same 6 stock photos for everything.
Right.
Of all the things that AI has improved the most, I think Bleeping Computer's coverage is possibly the most. So yes, this is a story where somebody, a Club Penguin super fan, as it were, hacked into Disney and had one objective: find information about Club Penguin. Instead, they got 2.5 gigabytes of internal corporate data, which includes a lot of inside information about corporate strategy. And somebody just dumped the internal Club Penguin information in a 4chan message that merely said, "I no longer need these," smiley face.
Sure.
Of all the data breach announcements, this one was particularly interesting. But these PDFs covered a lot of the old internal information about Club Penguin, which had design schematics, documentation, and character sheets. And this roiled the community. They loved it. It really got them excited and riled up for more Club Penguin. I missed this. It's not something that I participated in, but people who love Club Penguin are K-pop fans. They are very, very serious, and they will mount internet campaigns, apparently, that can take down even major corporations' security. So apparently, yes, they were able to breach Disney's Confluence servers, and they store a bunch of documentation. They end up with 2.5 gigabytes of corporate strategies, advertising plans, Disney Plus, internal developer tools, business projects, and internal infrastructure. This also included internal API endpoints and credentials for things like S3 buckets, which certainly seems like something that somebody who wasn't interested purely and only in Club Penguin would be interested in. So fortunately, our attackers today were merely the militant wing of the Club Penguin fan group, apparently. However, it could have been much worse. So definitely something worth keeping an eye on. Again, sometimes the most unlikely of threat actors emerge. And in this case, the Club Penguin breach was an unexpected blow to Disney corporate security. Bleeping Computer contacted Disney multiple times and has not received a reply yet, but I'm going to be checking back on this because I'm sure at some point they will get around to addressing the, as we're calling it, Club Penguin breach.
You know what? All I can think about is the end of Batman Returns, where the Penguin has his little penguin army with the little cute rocket launchers on them. That's what I picture going down here.
All right, so next up, we've got check-in terminals being used by hotels that are able to be hacked. So this is a very simple bypass. You basically type a single character, and it goes out of kiosk modes and allows you to just provision your own keys. So you want to go into someone else's room? No problem. You want to access the sensitive information of other guests? No problem. These are very, very convenient terminals that allow basically anybody access. Yeah, just
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So I always get nervous with these like self check-in things, especially when they seem like dusty and like third party or something. But this just makes me feel like I should be even more careful, because apparently the researchers reached out here and the majority of these have not been fixed. So if you're staying in a hotel that uses these, you might want to mention it, for one, because they might not be aware, because the company that is operating them may not have told the hotel owners. Apparently there were also some hotels in Germany that are also vulnerable to this. So a statement wasn't immediately available to Bleeping Computer, which is not surprising if they have not responded to the researchers exposing this vulnerability. So this is the second hotel-related vulnerability we've talked about in a couple of months, because there was also that really severe vulnerability that allowed people to take a valid key and make other keys to get into other rooms. And that was not fixed for many, many, many years. That was a vulnerability that was there for like 12 years. So that's also pretty crazy to learn about. All right, so we have more updates on the Snowflake saga. So a lot of people are asking questions, and of course, we did some of our own coverage on this attack last week. So the reason why for all these questions is a lot of Snowflake customers are coming forward and saying that they have data breaches. And this is now Advanced Auto Parts joining the group of companies who've said that they've been breached. This is 3 terabytes of data, which includes 380 million customer profiles with the name, email, mobile number, phone, address, and more. 140 million customer orders, 44 million loyalty/gas card numbers with customer details, auto parts, part numbers, sales history, employment candidate information. So that's going to be internal company information, secure social security numbers, driver's license numbers, and demographic details, and transaction tender details. Stunning amounts of information that could be used to do all sorts of cybercrime, or just accrue very, very detailed information about all these people. So 380 million people is a lot. It is a lot. So if you're looking where some of these automated campaigns in the future are coming from, the groundwork is being laid for some truly fantastic cybercrime campaigns in the United States here with the scope of these data breaches. And it seems like a lot of this data was stolen a while ago and is now being leaked as part of the campaign to pressure these companies. Either they didn't pay the ransom, or they paid the ransom and then didn't get the result they wanted. And now these threat actors are breaching the data anyway. So again, lots of questions being asked here, and 3 major security companies have come out alongside Snowflake here to, 2 major companies have come out and said that these were companies that were targeted because they did not use MFA. The credentials were stolen by info stealers, but it was not something that happened at Snowflake, and that there was a breach at Snowflake, but it was not something that contributed to these breaches.
I think again, it was like a demo account or something, wasn't it? I think that's what Snowflake said, was a demo account that got breached. Yeah. So if I'm to imagine the scenario, then it makes sense to me that somebody, like a group of threat actors that decided to go after Snowflake, would attempt to go after the main company while simultaneously going after their companies with the weakest security. And this is the result that we might see from like maybe some companies with a problem with their integration, or like that hadn't updated to the most recent security settings. So that's why some of the earlier messaging around, like, we're pretty sure that this is not the result of misconfiguration or vulnerability. This is customers that like did not enable MFA against our recommendations. That's what you get when you don't enable MFA, I guess, was kind of the message here. So still, though, a lot of companies kind of included in this breach. And I've seen some news headlines, like Wired was running one that said like the Snowflake data breach could be the biggest data breach in history or something. And honestly, though, it doesn't take too many huge customers involved to be the biggest data breach in history, like when you count them all together. So obviously there have been some like really big ones in the recent past, but this is one where still very surprising, and a lot of people involved in this who are now getting free credit monitoring. Congratulations, everyone. 380 how many people even live in the United States? 400 million something? Yeah. 380 of them included in this breach potentially? Oh, wait. Okay. Let's see. So United States, Canada, Puerto Rico. Okay. So it's not just the United States, but I was going to say, if it's 380 million customers in the United States, that's worrying.
All right, next up, we have a Linux version of target company ransomware focusing on VMware's ESXi. How interesting and convenient that
Right.
the exact same thing that has been used to target major companies is now being included in new variants of ransomware. Wonder why they did that. So this is the development we kind of expected to see based on just the stunning results from those casino hacks last year. So you can definitely expect that, you know, like this is going to be something that's built into future ransomware variants. And this is the first evidence we've seen of that, or at least the most recent evidence we've seen of that being ported over to Linux-based ransomware. All right, blazing through this. So if you have had a breach and you've kept quiet about it, that could be not a winning strategy. So it turns out the FBI has recovered 7,000 lockbit keys. So that's potentially 7,000 lockbit ransomware victims. So if these are companies that have concealed the breach and they haven't told anyone about it, they could actually be just one contact from the FBI away from getting back all of their data. Now, a lot of people are like afraid of admitting the breach. They think that, you know, it's going to affect like the way their customers see them. But, you know, honestly, like the solution could just be contacting law enforcement and then telling you if they've already taken down this ransomware group and have the means to restore the data that was ransomed by them. So kind of an encouraging sign that the FBI is trying to reach out. But obviously, it seems like they have the keys, but they're not really sure who those keys go to necessarily. I don't know if that's obfuscation on the attacker side or if the FBI is just waiting basically for these companies to confirm it. But it certainly seems like a useful result of some of these prosecutions and some of these takedowns if they're able to actually help companies that have been hit by ransomware and just need the keys to speed up their recovery. All right, so why should you not pay a threat actor? Kilian, what were your thoughts on this story?
They're cyber criminals, people. Like, they're clearly not in it for the moral good or, you know, to take the high road. I just, you're dealing with criminals. Like, it's gonna happen. I didn't have much of a thought of it, but like, this is not a surprise to me that it doesn't happen more often than this, to be honest.
Yeah, so a threat actor basically stole data here and threatened to publish 3 million rows of stolen information, including phone numbers, customer addresses, login information, home addresses, and other details. And in this case, PandaBuy chose to pay them to not leak that data. So this was a exploitation attack where they're like, listen, like this is going to cause embarrassment to you and your customers are going to find out. So just pay us and we can keep it quiet. So they said yes, and maybe they said yes too quickly. I don't know what it was, but something about it made this threat actor willing to risk their reputation to like basically cash in and say like, we want another one, like, you know, pay us again or we're going to leak this data. So at that point, obviously the company was like, no, like, okay, the deal's off. Like that doesn't make any sense to us. And now it looks like that information is being leaked. Plus the threat actor has made a handy sum on top of that. So it's really difficult for these companies to know if they're dealing with like a quote reputable brand of ransomware operator that actually does what they say they're going to do. And some of the largest ones obviously will do that. But frankly, if they land on hard times, then leaning on these giant buckets of data they can always turn around and sell is probably going to be too tempting for them to resist, especially if they can turn around and use that data for other crime privately without exposing it to the general public. So even if they're just sharing it with other cyber criminal organizations or other intelligence agencies, maybe a lot of this information is still very valuable and would be bought covertly, even if it's not sold on the open market. So super difficult time for PandaBuy because they chose to risk it and then ended up getting burned.
Yeah, and just to keep in mind too, it's worth pointing out that a lot of the ransomware groups operate in an affiliate model. So you could be dealing with all sorts of people under the umbrella that's not, you know, the reputable one. Also interesting too, if you scroll down a little bit more, the threat actor claimed they managed, up just a little bit where you were. Up a little bit more.
Is that it?
No, keep going, just a little bit more. Exploiting critical vulnerabilities and PandaBuy APIs. More APIs here. So protect those keys. Keep an eye on that. We're seeing that more and more, that attackers know that these are built for data exchange and communication. That's exactly all they do. So if you don't have good authentication on them, if you don't have good operational security around your tokens and storage and your API keys, attackers are going to exploit it. or if it's just, you don't vulnerability scan them.
Yeah. No, a lot of people being included in this breach because they are, as it says here, an intermediary between Chinese vendors and then various people who are buying in areas that they don't ship to. So a lot of people included in this breach. All right, this is a short one. GitLocker Wiper is attacking GitHub repos and basically contacting the owners and saying if they want to get their repos back, then they're going to have to pay. This is using stolen credentials and primarily works against accounts that are not using MFA. So obviously that is best practice at this point. A lot of these attacks we talked about today have been exploited because they're not using MFA. But yeah, look up what the number one suggestion. That's it. So yeah, all these are good suggestions, but really MFA would have prevented this here. So be on the lookout for this, and definitely backups are going to be something that you're going to want if you're an organization that's using GitHub and worried about this sort of attack. All right, Fog Ransomware is a new group that is targeting the U.S. education sector via breach VPNs. We like to keep an eye on emerging cybercrime groups, and often, like Kilian said, these are either affiliate organizations or sometimes they're just smaller groups of criminals. And it's not really clear which one this is, but it originally started in May of 2024, and it has been tracked ever since then and is using VPNs for initial access. This is stealing VPN credentials, phishing VPN credentials, and then managing to log in and do pass the hash attacks to get administrator account access, and then do all sorts of bad things with, great Hyper-V. More virtual machines being targeted with ransomware. So obviously, education sector has a ton of sensitive data about kids. It has a ton of critical information for running schools. So, deleting everyone's grades, like deleting the curriculum schedules, the ability to pay people, schedule things. That's all going to cause tons of problems. And schools being as integrated as they are now, like these are juicy targets that probably at a certain point have to decide at what point it's just worth it to pay the threat actors. So it's interesting to see all the different industries that are now being targeted very specifically by threat actors that are good at exploiting a specific sector and just kind of stick to that. Education is one of those things where it's probably not going to be, you're not going to get as big of an international coalition as you do going after hospitals. But then again, if you're not based in Russia, it probably makes sense to maybe not go after those targets. All right, almost done. So Ukrainians are saying that hackers are abusing SyncThing to steal data. And this is an interesting, like living off the land kind of attack, where people are using a legitimate data sync tool to automate data exfiltration once a attack has gained initial access. So they're basically saying that if you detect any sort of contact with the SyncThing infrastructure, you should just assume that that endpoint is breached and begin an investigation. Unfortunate for anybody that likes using SyncThing, but it is certainly a convenient tool for data exfiltration and a good guideline for people who are looking to defend against this specific attack. All right, and last today, wow, that was a short loop. Los Angeles Unified School District investigates data theft claims. So this is LAUSD investigating threat actors' claims that they're selling stolen databases containing records belonging to millions of students and thousands of teachers. Now, this is difficult to know also because there was a previous data breach, and the LAUSD is not sure whether or not the information is either from a new breach or from the previous breach. Now, often these threat actors will recycle the data and say it's something new and try to extract a victim, like another victim payment, or like a copycat might reformat the data or enrich it from another source and then purport it to be like a new data breach. So it's really difficult, I guess, to know that. But Vice Society has previously hit by, LAUSD was previously hit by Vice Society in 2022. So again, like it's a little confusing here whether the data that's being offered up for sale is new or if it is something that was stolen in that ransomware attack. And that's just about all we have this week. A lot of things to go through, and also a lot of cool and interesting new tools for both threat actors and also for investigators, researchers. That shade map one being probably one of my favorite that I've seen in a while. So
couple good comments here too, talking about Ty Tai Quan Guang was saying, I wonder how proficient I can be in the hacking trade. And James, of course, is encouraging him to do the bug bounty program. So good discussion here. Broke Hacker also says that he feels like all the companies who would pay for this are running scanners. Yes, they are. I mean, they absolutely are. But the difference is taking a novel approach. I know, like, Salesforce is something that we have security researchers looking at. It's a product that we cover from a security perspective. We have researchers finding new and novel things in there all the time. And Salesforce is just how many billions of dollars, do they make? Like, they have money for security research, but we still find things. So don't let that dissuade you. If you're passionate about a certain area of security, try a bug bounty program. Like, try doing research in that area. Certainly better than going to the dark side, please.
Yeah, and finding safe and legal ways of testing these things out, like deliberately vulnerable servers or things that are meant for education, like that's really where you get to get your hands dirty and use some of those like cool new tools I was talking about Kali Linux offering. So if you're interested, like learning some of the basic tools that are used all the time, learning them in a safe and ethical environment, and yeah, just trying to like stay relevant, like with the stuff that's happening and kind of learn along with the things you hear mentioned all the time. That's kind of how I got started, and I think it's a good entry point for just about anyone. Cool.
Oh, Broke Hacker says he saw me at RSA, but I seemed busy. You should have come by and said hi.
Hey, trust me, Kilian would always appreciate somebody from the show coming over to say hi, rather than talking to some random business person at RSA. Not that we don't love that, but we love the break, and frankly, we feel like we hang out with you guys like twice for Kilian once a week, but for me twice a week. Every week. So it's like, like at a certain point, like we should have a conversation. But
next shot we'll be at Black Hat and Defcon you'll be at for sure too. So if you're there, come say hi for sure. I'll keep my eyes out.
Yeah. And also some encouragement to try out bug bounties. Like, I think that CTF's bug bounty is like anything that allows you to use the tools that you would be using in a professional environment and feel more comfortable with them. Like that's really the trick here. A lot of people hyper focus on tools and get really interested in how they work and want to like try them out in an environment where they actually get to, shoot the cyber gun. And I love that. I think it's really fun. It gives people the excuse to do a deep dive on some of the things that might be a little difficult to learn out of context. And, like hopefully if you can find a good and ethical way of doing that, you can learn a lot of this stuff and demonstrate that you can do these things in the context of, a CTF or a bug bounty. All right. I think that I stared at you and left. Oh, well, I remember you. All right, cool. Cool. All right, everyone. So I think that that's just about all the time we have for today. Normally we would just be getting started, but it's nice to do this a little bit earlier. We have a peak of 138 people on the stream today. Nice. So hello to everyone in various places. If you didn't hear me before, I was also going to ask if anybody in the chat has gone to tour camp. That's just root backwards in the San Juan Islands. It looks like I'll be going for the first time this year, and I would love to hear about your experiences. Did you like it? What would you recommend? What should I bring? Is there anything I shouldn't bring? Let me know. So if you're going to go also, please let me know. It would be great for you to say hello. You can also just stare at me and leave. That's fine too. We love that. But yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. And I'm certainly looking forward to maybe meeting some people there. But if not, then also, as Kilian said, we will be at Black Hat and I will certainly be at DEF CON. And again, if you didn't see, you can check out my Twitter where I'm talking about the IoT Village DEF CON badge, which should be a lot of fun. So if you like radio stuff, if you like IoT, if you like hacking things over long distances, then definitely check that out. And if you know someone who's down to be a sponsor, then send them our way. All right, so that's all we have for this particular episode of Hacking with Friends. Man, we covered a lot. Upcoming hacker conferences, some cool new tools, a lot of news. If you had any questions, if you didn't understand anything, or if you think we missed something, feel free to leave a comment on the video on SecurityFWD, and I try to go through them and answer them while they're respectful every week on Wednesday. And aside from that, I saw some negative feedback from me loving my federal stickers. But hey, I have to say, I've been complaining about this computer for a couple years now. It's kind of on its way out, and I have a new one. And based on the amount of feedback I got saying that it was sad to see a hacker that liked the Fed stickers, look at what I did. I made a new one that has so many NSA stickers on it. So I definitely had a little bit of a reaction. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 5 different NSA stickers, but also a lot of CISA stickers, like I promised to do. So I said on my sticker showdown that I was going to put all those stickers to good use and that you would see CISA on my laptop. And I'm pretty proud of this one. So of course you see one of my favorite Veronis is in there. So I did this in about 45 minutes upon this computer arriving. I got this ThinkPad for like $400 off eBay, and it comes from an unknown source. So I will certainly be having fun trying to switch the stream over to this. I didn't do it this time because I didn't want to roll the dice, but look forward to a new set of random stickers and colors appearing on the bottom of the stream coming up. So that's all we have for this week. I will see you next Wednesday, everyone. And Kilian, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Hope you'll be back next week. And I think we're also going to try to have our incident of the month as well. So maybe you could join us for one of those too, and we could ask some more questions and like have some more conversations, because those are always pretty crazy. There's a lot of interesting incidents that our team finds I've never heard of.
For sure.
All right, everyone. See you next time. Have a good weekend and goodbye.
Take care.